Welcome this afternoon to our Board of Water Resources briefing meeting at 1:30. I think we're close to 1:30, 1:31. I'm Mike Davis. I'm the chair. We'll do introductions. Let's start over here. William.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. William Merkley, representing the Green River District.
Blaine Ibsen, representing Sevier River District.
Brian Steed, Grace Isle Lake.
Spencer Jones, the Lower Colorado River.
And Dana.
I'm Dana Van Horn, representing Grand Emery, Carbon, and San Juan, or Grand Emery, Carbon, and San Juan counties, in the Upper Colorado River.
And Dana Van Horn is with us remotely online. So as we do motions and things today, we'll do our group here, and then I'll go to Dana afterwards, and we'll do it that way, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I'm glad you're here with us, Dana. Thank you. Yes, and now we'll.
Sorry about the inconvenience.
Oh, we're good. Go ahead, Candace. And
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Candace Hassenjaeger, Director at the Division Water Resources. With us today is Shalane DiBernardi, Marisa Egbert, Tom Cox, Bradley Caldwell, Sarah Schechter, Joel Williams, Jessica Chen, Michael Sanchez. Shannon's doing our minutes. Thank you, Shannon. We have our amazing AV team. Seth Majors is here in the room with us, and Carmen back at the ranch at DNR. And then online, we have Ani Baynard, Russell Hadley, and Ethan Stayner. I think I got everyone.
great. And we're really thankful for everyone that could be with us and the staff that can be with us here and back at the office. And it's been a great conference, and it's just neat that we can do this down here and still get the work done. So it's great. I know this is a bit more effort to do these meetings down here. So thank you for all of you that put forth that effort. So let's dive into the discussion on the board agenda items, if we can. And we are scheduled to have Deputy Director Todd Adams here to do the member oath on Tim Hawks, our new member. And we hope that that's still happening.
Yeah, at the board meeting.
At the board meeting. That will be done at the board meeting. So then we have approval of minutes. So are there any, been able to check the minutes? Are there any corrections or things that we need to discuss about or edits on the minutes?
Look good to me.
Is there one of you that can do the motion?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you. Blaine, appreciate that.
I'll second.
I'm ready. Let's do this thing.
Get this done.
Let's do the second.
When the time comes.
When the time comes.
I very much appreciate Brian pushing us along, getting this done.
Do it again. Do it again.
We'll have a NRCS snow report from Jordan Clayton. I know he was coming, so I think he'll still be here. And he made a significant effort to be here as well because of the challenges they have right now with their funding and other things. So that's a great thing. And then we'll have time for any online public comment. Is there anyone online that wants to add to this for our briefing on the board agenda items? Great, thank you. We'll do the feasibility reports. So Ani, do you want to?
Oh, you let me first.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Blaine, thank you.
Okay, I'll take first and then we'll have Ani do it. But I went over with Ani and we met. This is North Creek Irrigation Company. It's in between Fairview and Mount Pleasant. It's just north of Mount Pleasant. This is an old irrigation company. They are asking us to help them, loan them some money on they've got unlined open ditches and an old diversion structure about 7 miles. They want to pressurize their system and that type of thing. They've actually been pretty aggressive. They have a Water Smart grant in hand and an ag optimization grant in hand. So they've done those things. They are coming to us to help with the balance of that. We met, it was a snowy day, kind of muddy. We drove around, saw their system. To me, it looks like a good project, but with that, Ani, take her away.
Thanks, Blaine. So yeah, I'm going to repeat some of the things he said, but North Creek Irrigation Company of Mount Pleasant is located in Sanpete County, just north of Mount Pleasant. They provide irrigation water to about 800 acres of ag land and serve 43 shareholders through a system of canals, ditches, and pipelines. Water is diverted from North Creek and flows through the system primarily in open ditches with some pipe. The ditches and pipelines are deteriorating and are in poor condition. And the proposed project involves installation of more than 7 miles of HDPE pipe, as well as improving the headwork structure, installing meters and turnouts, and installing a 10-acre-foot regulating pond. Due to the poor state of conveyance, the system experiences about 45% in system losses. The project is expected to reduce water losses and save about 1,600 acre-feet annually. The crop yield is expected to increase significantly, and the net benefit after completion of the project is estimated to be about $245,000 annually. We had Zion's Public Finance complete an economic analysis for the project, which indicated that the project has a benefit cost ratio of 1.14 after 50 years of operation, which is a positive. The applicant has been awarded a Water Smart grant and a UDAF grant, as Blaine described. And so the staff recommends the board authorize 30.7% of the project cost up to $1,732,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 27 years with annual payments of $75,000. And in the meeting, I'll show you some pictures and map and other things. So that's just a summary of what's to come. Are there any questions? And Tom Cox may be able to answer some questions too if I can't. So,
Do you have anything to add, Tom, before we ask you questions?
I wasn't on the field trip, but we had a extensive 2-hour long conference call or virtual meeting with the president. And I think the only thing I would add is the recommended repayment is $75,000 per year, which is pretty steep for them. It's right now they're only assessing $10 a share. So they would have to almost 5 or 6 times their assessment to make that payment. But they are applying for additional ag optimization grant, which they are very optimistic at getting. And if they get that, that'll bring their payment down to about $35,000 a year, which they're planning on raising their assessment to cover that amount. So,
and I spoke to Don Johnson a couple of days ago, and they've already raised their assessment to about $25, I guess $25 a share right now. So, so they're already in the process of increasing their assessment, but it will go up more than that. But they are very confident they will get more UDAF money. So
this is Blaine. Question: are they going to come to us asking for different terms today then, or are they content with the terms that are there?
They seem content right now. Before committal, the cost sharing may change depending on what they receive, if they receive more money. So
the project will be broken up into phases that'll be put in over 2 or 3 years. So they'll probably be good with the terms right now, and before we commit funds, that we'll probably know about any additional UDAF grant, so we can address things at that point.
So I have a question. I think, Anna, you mentioned that there would be an increase in crop yield or something to that effect.
mm-hmm.
How is that happening? Do they have storage on this system or is this just stream flow?
They don't have storage.
So are they increasing acreage of irrigated acreage, or how are they?
They've got- Go ahead, Tom.
Blaine wouldn't allow that, so. No, their water supply is so short. I mean, the water drops off in July. So right now, the system they have, the open ditch system, it doesn't carry their full water right.
It's just the losses that they experience.
It's broken up lining where there is lining and unlined ditches. So the farmers on the end of the system will actually get some water after this project is put in. So
Yeah, I've never seen a old concrete ditch system with as many broken up as that is. And the bottom line, where they're going to increase crop production is during the few months they can grow, they will have some water rather than having it.
Whatever water they have, they'll get to their field.
It will get to their field where right now it hasn't been.
right now, there's going to be about 100 acres that convert from just pasture or grass hay to alfalfa production. So that's where they get a lot of their benefit.
And their water pretty much drops off by the end of June, so they'll have
Okay.
more water later.
There will be just a small little regulating reservoir where
Yeah.
they're going to put it in pipeline, but it's not a storage
But
reservoir.
it's-
It's just to
okay.
regulate it while they're doing it.
Shalane, did you have something?
Sorry, yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to comment on this. The payments might go down. The way this was calculated was based on the benefit. So we wouldn't reduce the payments, is my understanding, unless you wanted to do that. Staff's recommendation would be to reduce the number of years, but leave the payments set the same. Because the payments have been determined by what the expected benefit is from their ability to grow increased crops. So
But it was also calculated based on the cost share percentage, and that would
True.
go
that's
down
true. So
with,
if the cost share percentage went down, yes, so the payment would be reduced and so would the years probably. That's,
But at this stage of the game, we're just doing the feasibility. And so we can
Yes.
work those details out, is my understanding, is when we
Absolutely.
get ready for committal of funds.
yes.
Yeah. And I've spoken to Don about that we'd, go through the cost sharing again after they find out if they get a UDAF grant. So,
Brian?
So I'll play my role here. This will ultimately increase depletions though, correct?
I didn't hear the question.
It would ultimately increase depletions.
there still will be irrigating the 800 acres. So whether any change would be a change in depletion between grass and alfalfa.
Okay. So where does the added crop growth come from?
They'll be converting the pasture, the grass hay, 100 acres or so to alfalfa. So they'll still be irrigating 800 acres. They'll just be growing alfalfa rather than grass hay
Okay.
pasture.
And it's the same depletion factor on.
Alfalfa may have a little bit higher.
But it's treated as the same as far as the depletion rate. And
Right.
it's just where they're saving the water is in the piping conveyance system.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Okay, any other questions? Any concern? Let's see, Blaine, you'll be doing the motion on this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to committal of funds. And we've got Hurricane City. And Spencer, do you want to present this?
This is a pretty good sized project. If any of you have been to Tokerville Falls or anything like that, in the past, this area has had a lot of really pristine water that's used for irrigation. And so they're looking to do a conversion with some of the irrigation water and the domestic. So it's going to consist of about 15 miles of pipeline and a new water tank and a couple of new wells. and I feel like that it's going to save quite a bit of water, really. The distance where Tokerville Falls is coming into this town. I've been on that road many times through the years, and it's a very slow road, but it's quite a distance. And so to enclose that into a pipe, I think is going to increase the efficiency quite a bit. So quite a large project.
Okay, and Marisa, you,
Well, we do have Ethan online.
Ethan.
I don't know how sunburned he might be from Hawaii.
A little bit.
But Ethan, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, and Ethan,
Yes.
do you have the most updated report?
I believe so. Yeah, the
As for one
one
repayment
or
on, yeah.
back to what one?
there's a copy
Yeah.
given to us. This is the updated report on this.
No, but I did. Oh.
Okay, Ethan, go ahead.
But the repayment hasn't.
Yeah, okay, so this project's had a lot of moving parts, and even at authorization, it was kind of expensive, so I'll go into it just a little bit. This was authorized back in December of 2023, so about 15 months ago. And there's been lots of changes over time, and so there's two parts to this project, and Board Member Jones kind of touched on the 15 miles of pipeline for the pressurized irrigation, which will help them save water from the old canal, and then from they've been converting some old agriculture to now pressurized irrigation as the city expands. But so there's that part of it, and then there's the drinking water part with the drilling of 2 wells and installing a 2 million gallon tank that will connect to the existing system. And so because this was authorized back in 2023, and we were going off estimates from the beginning of 2023, costs have changed a bit over the 2 years, and they've seen significant increases in material costs and some increases in labor costs, and so some of those costs went up, but yeah, the pressurized irrigation system, there's 2 phases of pipeline installation. The first phase is already underway, of mostly PVC and then some ductile iron pipe, and then there's another phase for a pump station and 2 3 million gallon ponds for settling purposes before they put the irrigation water into the system. And then the drinking water, which is the wells and the tank and the piping, about 3,500 feet of piping to connect. And so they're over the affordability guideline by about $5, and we actually redid that. Back at authorization, they were over by only $1, but now it's more, so they're even more over. But and so we looked at that because there was a chance they might need more money, but it turns out it'll be the same payment and amount of years and percentage as authorization, but it'll be split up because there's the 2 parts of the project. It'll be split up into 2 kind of escrows, and so yeah, if there's any questions about that, but so you see a number of different cost sharings there, where the NRCS has money going towards the pressurized irrigation. They're paying for 75% of that construction cost, but they don't have any money going into the drinking water portion. So we have a higher cost share there, and so the recommendation, I'll just get into that, will be that the board commit 33.5% of the project cost up to $12,665,000 from the city water loan fund, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $528,000, including reserves. So, yeah, any questions on that or?
Any questions?
That's,
Mr. Chair, can I chime in? Oh.
Marissa, go ahead and then
Yeah, I just want to explain a little bit. When this project came to us a year and a half ago, it was put, as one project. There was discussion of one bond versus two bonds to save money. I wish I had split it up on our end, because now there will be two escrow accounts, as Ethan said. And we were planning on two bonds until Friday night when our bond counsel called and said their bond counsel had already kind of started some things, and so it needed to be one bond. So that's why you have a new one. Spencer got hit with most of the, oh wait, never mind, and I hit Mike up a couple of times, but so Hurricane City knows of this. They know it's going to be one bond, but two escrows, which is why we are showing the two different cost sharing. Because that escrow account for the PI, the grant funds will not go in there, but our board will be putting in 85% between the board and Hurricane. We're doing 85%. They're doing 15, but it's a different cost share for the overall project because of that grant. And with the drinking water, it was more simple. It was 85-15 until they said they needed more funding. So that has added that other Board of Water Resources C&D fund that we are not doing any kind of authorization or anything on today. We are just focusing on committing the $12,665,000 to the project, and as staff and with bond counsel, we will work on these two different escrow accounts.
But it's one motion.
It is one motion. Now it's one motion because it'll be one bond, one repayment. And so that's where you get a different, the board will commit 33.5%, which doesn't match either cost sharing on these two breakdowns. And so trying to explain that in a report is a little hard. So this has very much been a lot of moving parts. Most of this is bid out. Found out on Tuesday that there was other stuff that has not been bid out that was not included in the cost estimate. We added that on Tuesday night. So that is equipping the wells. The bids we had for the wells, found out Tuesday night, was actually just for the drilling. So we've added some money in there. Apparently there's going to be some metering, which we didn't have in the cost estimate, but they have 1.3%. $1.3 million of contingency on their pressurized irrigation. And I just asked, Ethan, you said something about acreage of irrigation. My understanding is this is only a secondary system, not agriculture.
Yeah, that's
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this expanding their PI system protects and helps their drinking water system. It's drinking water that doesn't need to go on their lawns.
It's water, the surface source versus the well water.
So, yeah, I'm a little new to this, so if I ask the dumb question, I'll be that guy. But so this is recommended is at 0% interest over 25 years. I know that rate can vary. So what's the justification or rationale for setting it at 0 versus something, at least some modest interest that would help replenish the fund?
You want to take that, Ethan?
Yeah, sure. So this specific fund, the city water loan fund, can go, it can have multiple, like you said, multiple interest rates. And so we look at, that's the financial feasibility section of the report. So we look at the median adjusted gross income of the area. And based on that, we look at a certain percentage of that, and kind of that's the guideline for what we assume residents could pay for water, and that's the $59.50. And looking at their average water bill and average secondary bill and their property tax, and then what this proposed loan would add on per month per connection, it comes down to that $64.98. And so we figured they're already paying about $5 over what they could afford to, and so because of that, they're eligible to get a 0%.
Okay, that's really helpful. One line that really jumps out to me in there, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, but the really $3 per connection per month on secondary, is it really $3 a month? I'm talking about what the ratepayer is paying. Are they really paying only $3 a month for secondary? I'm unaware.
No, they're not.
Okay.
It's based. It came out to $3 because we figured about the last number we got was they're on average paying about $12 per connection per month, but there's only about 25% of the residents that are on that pressurized irrigation system, and so that's where the $3 comes into play.
So it's averaged out over all the ratepayers, even though it's
Overall, 9,077.
But even
Yeah.
so, the ones that are on secondary, they're still only $12 a month for secondary.
Is that for 12 months a year? Even though they don't get water 12 months a year?
So that's an average
Thank you.
cost. And so my last
Right.
question, I think it just sort of ties into this, but it's just, seems like a worthwhile project, but is a big investment of state dollars. Any sense of what Hurricane City has been doing in terms of water conservation? So what efforts are they taking to conserve water, to make their water supply go further, to justify significant state investment in additional infrastructure that helps with secondary and drinking water? We get it, but I'd just love to get some comment on what steps the city's been taking to make do with what it has already, basically.
One thing I would say on that is that's a good. They'll be at the they'll be at the board meeting, and that would be a good question to ask them. But we had certain requirements in our funding terms that we gave them at authorization that kind of go along with getting our funds, and one of those is the required daytime watering ordinance, where they pass an ordinance, and I think they've had this for a while now, but we're not allowed to water during the daytime. I think there's another one, but there was one that they had where they had to send us an agreement between them and the people who were getting all the stakeholders in the NRCS funding, and in that they had a document where they signed that they were committed towards the water savings that all those stakeholders had to sign. So that was one thing that they've been doing that I could think of. But yeah, I think it would be worth asking them in the meeting.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. It's helpful context for me. Thank you.
And just so you know, that agreement includes Washington County Water Conservancy District. And so that's part of that agreement, and I believe a few other cities.
I think that we might have
Your mic's off.
I think we've got a representative from Hurricane City here with us. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah.
You come up here and use the mic, we'd love you.
While he's coming up, but he mentioned that it's $12 per month, but it's average over 12. How frequently does that secondary system flow? I mean, is it only, you say for part of the year? I'm curious how long.
It goes dormant in the winter. Do you say how long the season?
Yeah.
It goes dormant in the winter, but we leave it on because we have livestock watering, and it's not that cold in Hurricane,
Right.
and we don't have the freezing problem.
So it's on all year, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's very little use in the winter. The, is it Tim Hawks? To answer your question, we are,
Could you introduce yourself?
oh, I'm Ken Richens. I'm the water superintendent with Hurricane City. The, we have a rather aggressive, water conservation, group. We're signed up with the Conservancy District. Any new building that uses over, after like 2 years ago, they have a set amount. I'm not sure what it was. I think it's like 8,000 gallons. And then they pay $10 a thousand above that. We have a very aggressive conservation rate. And we have signed all of the agreements with the district to we are on board with all of the conservation. Just in our own our old system, if in the summer, if they go over 36,000, they're charged $1 a thousand extra. And this money is put in a fund that goes to the district, and it goes to water conservation projects. But we're really on board with water conservation. In our irrigation area, we're gonna take outside watering of over 700 houses, and right now they're using culinary water, and we're gonna be able to use that culinary water in our culinary system and extend that, and we'll use Virgin River water for outside watering.
Thanks, Ken. That's really helpful.
Any more questions?
Oh, Brian.
Ken, I don't remember. This has been back and forth. Is that secondary system metered per household?
Yes,
Okay.
it's designed to be metered. In fact, we applied for a grant, and we put half of the old part of Hurricane was already in the irrigation system. And just a few years ago, we're still installing the last meters, but we're on board with metering.
Okay.
And
Is that through the ARPA?
yes,
Okay.
And,
yep, but I'm sure it came through this board.
Yeah, the ARPA funds did.
and one last question, in terms of the pricing, that tiered system you're talking about, conservation, that's for your culinary, not for your secondary, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thanks.
And the new connections will be metered, the new
Oh.
pressurized.
100%. There is some ag because our fields are still growing out. Even all of the ag will be metered. The larger meters are also going to be, and we are on an AMI system. So we have pretty well instant information about who's using how much water, and both culinary and irrigation are on AMI.
And that was the requirement also from through the ARPA funds.
But we were already on AMI with our culinary, so it's very easy to transition onto it. Same software, same everything.
Any more questions from the board?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Glad to have you here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Marisa. Spencer, are you going to be doing the motion on that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next item on committal of funds, RE 446, Provo River Water Users Association. This is my area. We've heard a lot about the Deer Creek Dam, but Tom, why don't you tell us what we're doing today on it?
Well, if for the new board members' benefit, maybe I should do a little bit of history on this. So,
That'd be excellent.
so Deer Creek Dam, the constructed over 80 years ago now, not only holds back water for the water users of the Provo River Water Users Association, but all of the, like most of the central Utah water passes through that facility. So being 80 years old, there's really nothing been done to upgrade the controls, the upstream part of the outlet. Upstream of those controls have never been inspected because they can't shut the water off to do that. And so that it was getting time to do something to revamp those controls and make it possible so they could shut off the water at the intakes. They can inspect the whole outlet. And so that's how this project came to be. The cost estimate is $100 million, and that's a hefty price tag. Part of that is because they're doing this in such a way that they do not have to drain the reservoir and waste all that water to do the work. A lot of it's done with divers, and in looking at how because they still have to deliver water no matter what. So they had to come up with a way to keep delivering water without draining the reservoir. And they decided that instead of spending money on just a temporary fix to deliver water for a year or two, they are installing a bypass outlet. And so that part the hole has been bored, the pipe is in place, and they're getting ready to tie it into the regular outlet. So all those things kind of came together with the $100 million project. The sponsor, the applicant, came up with $7 million for their cost share. Central Utah Water Conservancy District has an operating agreement because of the Central Utah Water that passes through there. So they're paying 17% of the cost. So that's another $17 million. The board back then looked at the amount of funding that it had available. So the board authorized and subsequently committed $65 million to the project, and that kind of left a $11 million hole. So the association went out trying to track down funds. They looked at federal funds, which are available, but if they accepted those, it would have made the projects more expensive, and they would have been tied to certain requirements for the federal government. They approached the legislature 3 times, were turned down, and so they went to the Division of Drinking Water. They had about $7 million that they could provide without kicking in some more federal requirements. So they got $7 million from the Division of Drinking Water. And so they came back to the Board of Water Resources for the final $4 million piece. So the board authorized the $4 million, I think it was in December, and now they're ready for committal of funds for that final $4 million piece. So that's what they'll be here for today, is just committal of funds for those $4 million. So the repayment terms match what they were on the original $65 million. That's 1% interest over a repayment period of 35 years. And with payments of about $141,000. So that's where those numbers came from. So any questions about that?
So all we're doing today is just the additional 4 million. The other 65 million is in the books. It's done. So today is just the last 4 million. Is that right?
Right. The 65 million has been committed and bonded, and they spent probably 2/3 of that already. And so we're just back for the final piece, the $4 million.
So can I ask, it was my understanding that it went back to the legislature again this year and were able to get money. What money did they get, and what's it for, and how does that play in with this ask?
Okay, so they went back to the legislature, asked for the 4th time. They asked for 4 million this time, so not 11 million. The legislature approved 4 million, appropriated that, conditioned on they come up with a water lease of 35,000 acre feet for at least 15 years. So the association would love to utilize that funds, but they're looking right now on how they can accomplish that water lease. That's kind of where this sits right now.
So can I ask a follow-up? If we fund this, then does that get them off the hook for that?
No.
Please.
Just to add to what Tom is saying there. So this would allow for a $4 million loan, right? That they're going to have to pay back. The money from the legislature, the benefit of them doing that is a grant. That is an appropriation. We have to contract with them, and they are trying to figure out how they're going to work with that 35,000. how that's going to work. So we won't give them that money until that is confirmed as far as the appropriation from the legislature. My other understanding is that they may reduce their amount that they're getting from drinking water, because they also went to the drinking water board for a $11 million appropriation, but they didn't want the federal funds. And so they may reduce that in place of this one, is my understanding.
Right. And so the association's plan is, if the board commits the funds today, they will probably close on their $4 million water resources bond, the loan, next week. And then they'll see how the timing of the $4 million grant and how that works out. And if they can't work it out to utilize that $4 million grant, they would reduce the drinking water board amount, because they're at a higher interest rate than water resources.
That was my question. What is the drinking water rate?
I'm not sure, so you'd have to confirm with the association, and they should have someone here at the board meeting.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's 2% plus, but that's what I think.
Oh, okay. I do know that I was on the funding panel yesterday. Drinking water follows the bond index. They said it's about 3.8 right now. We do 75% of the bond index rate. So, but I don't know if that plays into this one at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's 2.75%. So it's higher than what water resources has.
All right, thanks.
Any further questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please go ahead.
could I just have an explanation on what the legislature and the $4 million, what is this lease of? What are the terms of the lease that they're
Looking
They're
at
suggesting.
the actual wording in the bill, just lists that they will lease $35,000 or 35,000 acre feet to the Department of Natural Resources for a period of 15 years, and that it doesn't give any more details unless you're aware of more than that.
I would just add to that, we are investigating the intent language a little bit more, and there were definitely people that were involved in those discussions, and maybe even Brian could add some insight, or Joel Ferry. But part of it is that 35,000 over 15 years is how I remember it being listed out, but there was we're seeking clarification. Is that 35,000 acre feet per year or over the entire 15 years? And yeah, so we're investigating a little bit more into the intent language there, and that may or may not impact their ability to make it, but we want to make sure that we understand the intent of the legislature on that.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
This isn't a question, it's really just a comment, I think, but sort of conceptually, I think the understanding, at least and I'm remote from it, right? I haven't been involved in that, but my understanding of the sort of the genesis of that whole leasing idea was that if they'd have to use the traditional way to fix the dam, they would have had to empty the dam and send most of that water downstream. And so the idea here is, well, if the state enable you to get by and maintain more water in there, then, well, can you lease some water downstream, say for Great Salt Lake, it's something like that. So that's a little bit of context as far as I understand it.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Many of you may have been in their presentation on progress during the summit or the workshop, and I don't know if it would be appropriate during the board meeting, but they have an 11-minute video that talked about their progress in 2024 and finishing the micro tunnel and the bypass tunnel, and it's definitely worth watching. It's a very fascinating project that they're accomplishing.
And that reminded me, they did share that video with me, so I can share it with the board if you like, or watch it during the board meeting if you'd like, or
If I don't know if we necessarily need to see it during the board meeting, but yeah, if you could send it out to us later today, that'd be
I think
great.
that would be an appropriate
it's just
one.
it's on YouTube, so I'll send you the YouTube link.
Okay. And I think we can possibly just say that it's available on YouTube if there's somebody that wants to find it, that is available. Okay, any further questions? Yes, Tim?
I'll try to keep it brief. I don't know if there's an easy answer to this, but obviously, leaving it full and doing divers and stuff adds a bunch of cost. Any sense of what it would have cost if you'd done it the historic way? I mean, I know we're talking about a big block of water there, but if you drained it and fixed it, like, is that a $40 million project, a $60 million? Any idea there?
I don't. I'm sure the association would know that, and they should be here for the actual briefing meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
And I don't know that it was exactly, I'm a little familiar with the Central Utah component of it, because they run the water plant at the bottom of Provo Canyon. I think there was a high consideration of their ability to provide drinking water to Utah Valley without having it there, not just the cost of the water per acre foot scenario. And so I think there was much consideration, and a lot of that water goes to Salt Lake Metro. So it's the same issue for their treatment plant up above Draper there. So I think those were high considerations in that as well.
I think one of their first ideas is to provide that water was to just run pipes, hoses over the spillway, pump it out of the reservoir, and so it go down to the Provo River. But that's why they went to the idea of the bypass outlet, so they could still deliver water, and it'll be at a different elevation than the normal outlet is, so they have more of a control over the temperature of water released in the Provo River, so there's more of an environmental advantage there.
Okay, any further questions? So this project is in my area. Is there someone here on the board that would be willing to make the motion on this?
I would be willing to do that.
Thank you, Spencer. Okay, next we have some special items. We have RC 068, Twin Creek Special Service District, the Lindsay-Bennett Dam. And I'm not sure who is.
So that's Ethan, but I don't know if he's still there. Okay.
Yeah, he's here. This is in my area again, and this is something I've been associated with for many years. 25 years ago, I was the guy that went and inspected the dams for the county, and the Bennett Lindsay was an issue then on the outlet, and so we're finally getting this addressed. So go ahead, Ethan, if you wouldn't give us an update on that, please.
Yeah, for sure. This one, and we actually committed funds to upgrade the outlet back in August of last year. And so this is just, they just need additional funds. When we committed funds back in August, I can't remember if we had final design or 90%, but either way, they didn't have final comments from the dam safety office at Water Rights. And so there were some significant changes that they wanted to see. There's been some changes that they kind of added throughout the project. They had some dewatering stuff that they had to deal with, some groundwater issues that they had to deal with throughout that weren't expected. And so they just need some extra dam safety grant funds to finish off the outlet project. And this high hazard dam, but this is not all the work that's required to get it to meet those state minimum standards. They got bumped up on the list by the dam safety office because the outlet was in such rough shape, and so they cameraed the line I think early last year, maybe the end of 2023, and kind of saw it. There were, I think, 3 different sections. There was a concrete pipe section that was an oval shape, and so yeah, pretty rough shape. And anyway, they've got the new concrete encased HDPE in there now, and they're just needing some final funds to get them over the top. And so they're looking for an additional 256,000, and like it was before, it's an 80% cost to share as a dam safety grant, and it brings the cost from the board to 744,000. So yeah, any questions on that?
Any questions from the board?
Chairman, just an observation for the new board members. You'll notice that this one, where it's an upgrade required by the minimum standards, on municipalities, we go 80% grant. Ag and the non-municipalities, we've been going 90%. So if you notice the difference between, well, why is this 80 and the other, most of the others we encounter are 90%, there is that distinction that on the municipal ones, we've been going the 80%.
Thank you. Again, this is one of my projects. Is there someone willing to make the motion? Thank
I
you.
can make the motion too.
Let Dana, let her do it.
Dana, if you would, that I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy to.
Okay. Next item is RE 493 Dry Gulch. We have talked about this a little bit. William, if you want to give us an update, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'll leave a lot of the project details to Russ. I see he's online. But just want to mention that we did have an opportunity to sit down with Russ, the design engineers, and also the project owners, going over the details of the project. Sounds like it's a phase project for which not all phases have been brought to this board, but one that is necessary to modernize the way that they're delivering their water. Because of cost constraints in the past, they have used just passive air vents to break pressure rather than having PRVs. And at one location, if I remember correctly, and Russ, you can speak more to this, in order to maintain the flows that are necessary for one of their pressure zones, it necessitates like 3 to 4 second feet of waste in order to match the pressure and the flow requirements, which isn't obvious because they're pulling water out of a reservoir, is not an efficient use of their storage. And so with that, I'll let Russ take it on.
Yes. Yeah, we've done 12 projects with Dry Gulch before. And what we're talking about here is the K2 service area that serves about 3,120 acres. And at the time, they wanted to save money. As Mr. Merkley had said, they wanted to save some money, so they put in stand pipes and simple air vents, old-fashioned design, and they've been losing a huge amount of water that they have to dump in order to pressurize the system. And yeah, they are wasting anywhere from 1 to 4 CFS. They go straight into Cottonwood Ditch, of which they own the water rights, so there's not a problem there. And now they are worried about all that water they're wasting, and they'd like to recover it. So they want to put in official PRVs. They've got some grant money lined up, a couple of sources. This would be a phase 2 of this whole project to fully pressurize this K2 system. So we'll talk about the funding, but anyway, they've got some grant money from the Water Smart grant and Department of Agriculture and Food. They lined up $500,000 grants from both of those sources, and this portion, only $31,000 each, is coming from Water Smart, and the UDAF Water Optimization Grant will be $31,000 as well. That's just this portion of this total project. This would be phase 2. And so president of Dry Gulch and their engineers will be at the board meeting if you have any questions. So that's it. Because of the large amount of water that'll be recovered, they're going to get a huge benefit out of this. And all that 1,080 acre feet they're going to save is going to go to increased crop production. So they should be able to repay this within 15 years. So it was originally looked at for having the board authorize and commit this project today, but there are some easement issues that are going to take a while to work out. So we're suggesting now we're only going to authorize the project today. So staff suggests the board authorize the project at 77% of the project cost, up to $492,000. And the project would be purchased at 0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $32,800. Now the staff's report.
Yeah. Look at the
Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I got a question for Russell. What's that background you got behind you with that snow falling?
Oh, that's my winter cabin. Yeah, I'm up here, you know, in the mountains up here in Alta.
That's a pretty good background.
He'd said he might be, you know, he's in the avenues, and he said he might be looking for a house, and I'm like, wow, I guess he went ahead and got the new house. So looks pretty good, chalet.
Yeah, I started up a fire and everything. It's just a great day for a fire.
Russell, all of a sudden I saw all the board members start looking, kind of hitting each other and looking at the big screen to see your big layout there. We'd like to have our next board tour up there, please, if we could.
Looks awesome.
I wish.
So Russell, will this motion, you have it authorized and commit, or are you saying it should only be authorized?
Yes. It's been discussed that there's still a little ways off from taking care of all the easement issues on this. So we better hold off today. There's more easement problems than we initially thought there were. It's going to take them a while to get all the meets and bounds recorded with county recorders. So they're a ways off from having all the requirements done. So we're looking at the April board meeting to commit funds.
Okay, Marisa?
May board meeting.
Oh, May
Yes,
board.
we have an April meeting at your new digs.
May board meeting. Yeah.
Maybe the weather be better then. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Brian.
On water conservation, you said that it's about 1,080 feet water conserved, but they're also anticipating growing more alfalfa. Square that for me.
Well, they won't be dumping 1,080 acre feet into the Cottonwood ditch anymore. They will be conserving it so they can use it.
Okay. But so we anticipate this to have higher depletion than they would have had otherwise, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think you could also say they could leave another 1,000 acre feet in the reservoir if they need to, the Browns Draw Reservoir. They have that option now to save it in the reservoir.
But if they're growing more alfalfa, my guess is they wouldn't be doing that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions on the board? Oh, Marissa?
Mr. Chair, yes, if I may, and Russell, just so you know, Roger Ames, the president, found me at about 10:20, maybe it was 11:20. And so on the committal of funds, we are just going to authorize. Roger Ames, the president, is fine with that. I just want you to know their attorney is Gail McCackney, and he dots every I and crosses every T. And it's really not so much the project itself that has an issue with the easements. It's that they are going to connect into a pipeline that's been in the ground for about 10 years that we did not fund. And that's where the easement issues are. Is that right, Russell?
Yeah.
They don't really have
questions
something
about
that
a
Gail
lot of
likes.
the easements all throughout that pipeline. And it
And
is
Gail
correct.
McCackney wasn't comfortable. Yeah.
We did not have anything to do with that pipeline, so.
So there's about 30 landowners apparently. And so That's why we usually just authorize and then we tell them to go do their laundry list of work. This one looked like it was going to be really fast, and then the attorney called us and said, not so much. So that's why. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, William.
So it takes me 2 or 3 times of hearing something to understand it. We can authorize the project, they can move forward and incur costs. Is that correct?
We have typically, if we authorize the project, told them they can go ahead and start construction. However, it's still on them until we have a purchase agreement completed. We're very careful about committing funds because we have found over the many years, once we commit funds, they think it's done. And why can't we get a contract? Why can't you reimburse us yet? So we really try to hold off. And we've had things, I've got one that's been going on a couple of years, and I don't even know if the people that I worked with, they were supposed to get shares to us, and it's only been authorized. So, I don't even know if the same people even are involved anymore. So we really try to be careful about committal. On paper for us, once it's committed, we deem it internally as it's taken. And we don't like to have stuff sitting on committal for a long time. So.
Okay, and for the motion on this, William, can you make the motion on this one?
Yes, I sure can. Okay, can I ask one more question?
You bet.
So if we allow them to go forward, has there ever been a situation where we authorize it, they move forward, and then we deny committal of funds? Okay. So I guess they're going forward in good faith.
Experience to that.
Okay, I was just wondering because if they move forward in good faith, that this is all going to be worked out. But I guess there is still some risk that
We've had a couple of committals that we withdrew that had been out there that they never did anything.
Yeah, and that's, And we have had,
half a year.
there was one time the legislature did take some funding out of our kitty, and it was committed but not contracted. And so we always are careful to say you're on your own until you have a purchase agreement.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes,
I think what I've seen is most likely if a project has been authorized, but they haven't gone through the steps to finish it, it just doesn't get to that next stage. So we have older projects that have been authorized but have never moved on. And so we've worked to try to clean those up. But that's probably the most likely thing. It's not that the board denied their committal of funds. It just never made it to that next step because they didn't go through their items.
And if I may, in talking to Roger, he understands they can start. And he said they could even wait and phase 1 can go. It'd be great to do this phase 2. And I said, it would be on you, to do that. And so in May, we can do the committal of funds. And I said, well, Roger, if you end up finding out prices are higher at committal of funds, we can adjust that. Whereas if we get you a contract and then you have higher funds, you still got to come back and then we have to do an amendment. And so, so that is one thing about that.
I'd also like to say they did have their official vote on this based on these numbers. They've all designed this whole project. 95% designed. They've still got a few details. They've done a water conservation plan. They updated it. They've met a lot of our requirements, so they were close, but they just didn't. I could say to Blaine, I was trying to help them out and be Superman and get them authorized and committed. But then when we ran into some easement problems, it turned out to be kryptonite.
So if you remember from a Northern Bird meeting.
Oh, come on, Superman.
And if I may, that is why Russell was assigned this project, because we thought it was going to be authorized and commit and it needed to be flipped. And so once again, he did swoop in, but someone made a false 911 call.
Yep.
So.
And they're also trying to get this bid in April, but that's not going to work out now. So
Okay, any other questions from the board?
No.
Great. Next item for the briefing, we'll have Stephanie McGinnis there with an update of the state water plan. And does she have a presentation to go with that?
Yes, she will have.
Okay,
Oh, yep, she will have a presentation.
that'll be great. Look forward to that. And it would be your turn, Director.
Yes, yeah. So I will do a director's report at the board meeting, and I'll save you guys from hearing it twice. We do have a couple of items as information to the board. If we could move on to that stage, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, please do.
Perfect. Just quickly, Shalane will give us status of funds. While she's coming up, we are preparing for a board tour at our August meeting is I think our general plan. We'll get additional clarification, but we did kind of hone in that it will be in the Salt Lake Tooele area. But yeah, we'll get you more information as we go along there. Shalane, status of funds?
Yes, thank you. And yeah, for those who weren't involved or may not recall, in January, we discussed the board tour and after the comments about Metro's proposed aqueduct resilience projects, the board expressed interest in doing a tour centered around those projects happening along the Wasatch Front. So that's what we will focus on. If there is anything else in the Salt Lake Tooele area you would like to see, let us know and we'll see what we can fit in a day-long tour in August. Status of funds, I did just notice that I put the wrong number for Dry Gulch and I have the total project cost there and not the actual board share. So I'll correct that before, it's nice now, it's only being authorized, not committed. I'll fix that before the next status of funds. You can see we do have, even with everything that's authorized and committed, we still have over $14 million available in revolving construction funds. Those are for the projects where the board share is less than or equal to $1 million, not for municipalities, only for domestic water companies or irrigation companies. The dam safety funds, not much has changed. That additional funding request that we're bringing to you today for Lindsay-Bennett Dam, you can see that there. But as I shared, I believe I shared out with all board members after the January meeting, Tom has a projected spreadsheet and we already know where it's going for the next few fiscal years, any available dam safety funds. So moving on to City's Water Loan Fund, I'm thinking this is probably the last time you'll see this. Hurricane City will be the last project funded out of the city's water loan fund before it is repealed and folded into the state water infrastructure fund. That takes place May 7th. So, and future repayments will go to that fund as well. So really providing this funding today at zero interest isn't going to impact you a whole bunch. So our C&D fund still has a healthy balance, although the $172 million that's listed there as available actually includes, we believe, I keep trying to talk to our finance manager and make sure how it's been deposited. I believe this includes $95 million for the Washington County reuse project.
It's just to clarify, it's for the Colorado projects within the Colorado
Yes.
River reuse and conservation.
Yes.
And which they will apply for.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Thank you for that clarification. And we are expecting another $100 million over the next 2 years to be transferred from the WIRA account to the C&D fund for those purposes. So it'll be a total of 195 million. But so from that 172.95, there's still funding available in the C&D fund. So we do have some pending applications, I believe, that are not included in the board packet today. So they are not listed here. Our small system secondary grant funds, I mention this every time just because it's fun and confusing, that it looks like we're overdrawn, but we get a $2 million appropriation every year that's supposed to be spent in that fiscal year unless we get non-lapsing authority. So it's a juggling numbers, what's actually being spent and what's available, so we don't lose anything. And ARPA's still there, but it's all been contracted. As I mentioned last meeting, we may have some coming back. We're going to have to figure out what sort of legal process we need to set up to be able to get those funds reallocated when we do get some returned. But right now, everything's contracted. And for those who, I'm not sure if you made it to my presentation yesterday, but I was able to say that of the $265 million that covers the secondary meter projects and the water conservation projects, we've spent to date $132 million. So we've done good work. You've done good work. Staff's done great work. So are there any questions on the status of funds? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Shalane.
Thanks, Shalane. And I've asked Joel Williams to give an update on the legislative summary. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Joel.
We tracked, I guess I should wait till I get to that. Okay, the session ended at midnight on the 7th. And for the first time ever, I watched it all the way till midnight because there was a few bills we were following that took until then to pass. It's pretty. We tracked 74 bills. Thankfully, I didn't list all 74 in this packet for you, just the kind of some of the ones that I thought would be of interest and that we could discuss briefly. The total budget passed was $30.8 billion budget. It included a 2.5% pay raise for state employees and a 1% amount for pay for performance, which we have been using for the last couple of years to target employees that have exceptional performance. There was also $4 million, as was discussed previously, included for Deer Creek Reservoir with some contingencies. There was $3 million for Bear River Basin cloud seeding that would come to our office, and another one for $5 million for Panguitch Dam, which also had some contingencies on that to replace Panguitch Dam. So jumping through the bills, the first 2 pages will be the bills that passed, and then we'll cover a few that didn't pass just because I found it to be interesting, kind of what did make it and what didn't and what we can learn from it. The first one, House Bill 41, was state water policy amendments. It kind of clarified some of the aspects of state water policy in code, and just a couple of items that it mentioned that address water resources specifically was mentioning that Utah will promote state water planning, including the formation of our state water plan, which we are currently working on, and you'll have an update on that later on, and from Stephanie McGinnis. And then the other item, which we have our watershed councils coordinator in our office, Carly Payne, who presented at Water Users. She one of the items there is that the watershed council should coordinate with drinking water system to try to help protect watersheds. So that was another mention in that bill. But House Bill 81 was of interest. There was some very impassioned discussions about fluoride in water, but it did pass, which now means there will not be any fluoride added to public water systems.
House Bill 160. It was interesting. It originally included professional engineers, which we have many of in our office. That was later removed from the bill, but it still included professional geologists, and we have one of those in our office. Basically, they no longer are required to have their degree be from an accredited university. So it was one of the changes to that bill, kind of interesting. The House Bill 223 state grant requirements would mean that, and we do provide a lot of grants in our office, and that it means that if anybody who is a recipient of a grant wants to know how much of that grant fund was spent to administer the grant, time and effort, that we would disclose that. And so I don't view that being an issue for us. A lot of the grant money that we provide we don't use those funds to administer it, but if someone requests it, we can provide that information. House Bill 243, ag water optimization, made a couple of minor changes. It wasn't a long bill, but one of the shifts there was the matching fund percentage from 50% to 25% for a few different types of irrigation, and those are listed in the bill. We were excited to see the pollinator program get permanent funding. I haven't been at the legislature a long time, but not long enough to see that they've had to come multiple times to try to request funding for each year. And we work with them sometimes we hand out seed packets at some of our events because they contain native plants that are water wise. And so we are glad to see that program get some permanent funding. The big one one of the big ones was the next one, House Bill 274 from Representative Snyder, titled Water Amendments. It sets up tiered rate billing for it existed for drinking water, and it made some modifications to that that they can now include conservation as part of setting a water rate. It also introduced a requirement for secondary water to have a tiered rate, and for them to also consider conservation as part of that rate. There was an interesting addition. This bill is the one that I think it ultimately passed at 11:23 on Friday night, 11:23 p.m. So minutes before the session ended, finally did pass. But there was an interesting amendment from Senator Stratton, and it's in the second to last bullet there. Notwithstanding, a secondary water supplier shall charge an end user at the lowest rate of the tiered conservation rate if the end user is using a portion of the water to grow food, including a garden, fruit trees, or pasture for grazing. The concern that we and others had about that was anyone who is essentially saying they are growing food and maybe they have a basil plant, that they could now say, oh, I'm going to be billed at the lowest tiered rate. And so we feel like that could be detrimental to the conservation efforts of having tiered rate billing. And so we would hopefully be able to work on something that might address that between now and the time that this would take effect. The secondary water component of it really would take place in 2030. So between now and then, we hope to work to maybe amend that a little bit so that we don't have a whole bunch of people exempt from tiered rate billing. House Bill 2, and if you have questions, feel free to just jump in. I'm just going to go through these as quickly as I can. House Bill 285, water infrastructure modifications. It was building off of last year's House Bill 280 from Representative Snyder that kind of set up this new way that water will be funded in the state of Utah. This created this particular bill this year, made it so that the state agencies can put money into and take money out of the water infrastructure fund. It also modified the relevant agencies within the Water Development Coordinating Council. All of those 5 agencies listed are still part of the council, but it would change the relevant agencies to just be Division of Water Quality, Drinking Water, and Water Resources, because they are the main funding agencies. Yes, Blaine?
Quick question on that one. As far as when this bill goes into effect, how is that going to impact people who historically have filled out an application for funding from the Division of Water Resources? Now it appears like it needs to go to this other entity who prioritizes us before it ever comes to us. How is that going to function?
Great question. That's been what has gotten a lot of our attention is realizing it's going to be very different from what we're used to. That now an application after this takes effect, and it would be after 2026. Is that right, Candace? 2026. The application would then go to the Water Development Coordinating Council, who would decide where does this get assigned? Is this a drinking water project that should go to Division of Drinking Water? Is it a water quality project that should go to them? Is it an agricultural project or secondary water that should go to the Board of Water Resources? And then the board would determine, is this on the priority list? And that would be something that each division has to formulate a priority list of projects. Those all also get consolidated into the statewide water infrastructure plan and compared against that priority list of projects. It would likely, rather than being applications received throughout the year like we're used to now, it would be a once a year application period. So it could slow things down from a water provider perspective, to have to be able to plan ahead and decide, oh, I'm going to need to get on that list of prioritized projects, need to get my application in, and then wait for the timeline to work out to where they can get their funding.
One thing I would add is that the board's revolving construction fund isn't subject to this priority process. So that is still within your guys' purview as far as trying to make sure that we have funds available. Obviously, that's a limited fund up to $1 million, typically for agricultural and for dam safety. But that fund is still completely under your purview. And our goal is to work really closely with you through this process. We have hired, ended up being Bowen and Collins who received the award to help us develop relevant agency plans, which are actually due in June. So we hope to bring those to you to review and provide input in, as well as we're trying to start collecting all of this information.
Yeah, there were a lot of discussions and meetings about this bill with the state funding agencies, with the bill sponsor, trying to come up with something that could work and be a benefit. The advantage to this system would be the ability to share funds amongst the state water funding agencies, so that if there were a particular need in one area, more funding could be directed that way. Whereas right now, the different boards don't have the ability to share funds.
Joel, could I ask a question?
Please.
Quick? So what is the degree of sifting that takes place at what was the name of the group?
Water Development Coordinating Council?
Yes, sir. Is that where the priority schedule exists, or the list? And is it only those projects that are on that priority schedule that then get distributed out to the relevant funding agencies?
I'm going to let Candace answer that. She's the chair of the council.
So the plan is, once again, we are developing this as we go. So we're going to learn a lot this first year, and we're trying to keep it as simple as possible, but it will inherently end up being complex. But the list that the Water Development Coordinating Council will evaluate is based on the relevant agency plans. So the Division of Drinking Water will submit one, the Division of Water Resources will submit one, and the Division of Water Quality will submit one. So our goal is that you guys will be involved in that process. We're working on a pretty tight timeline at this point, but we are able to update and refine that every year, that relevant agency plan list. The goal will be that for funding, my understanding is that they will have to be on the list to be funded. Does that make sense?
So the plan that's going to be submitted from these relevant agencies, is it going to go into that much detail as far as individual projects?
Yes, we are with Bowen and Collins working on outreach to each of all of the systems, trying to compile this kind of project list for each of these. And to be honest, I think the agricultural piece has the biggest effort that we need to put in, the biggest hurdle to get there, just because there's not typically as much capital asset plans and development, right? Like a lot of times it's like, well, we know we need to do this, but it may not be written down anywhere. And then the question would be, if a company has multiple projects, what is their highest priority? And we're anticipating that that would be ranked as well.
And I just looked at the clock and realized we've got 4 minutes until the board meeting starts. And so I think I'll just call it good for now. You can read through these. And if you'd like further discussion, we could have that at any moment. So.
Real quick, Sarah, do you want to give a very quick legal update on the 3 items we talked about?
There we go. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here. This is really quick. So 3 items. The first is the Utah Physicians versus Department of Natural Resources case, the Great Salt Lake Public Trust case. We are still awaiting a decision from the judge, and I anxiously check my inbox every day to see when it's going to drop. And we are working internally with DNR public relations officers to make sure that we have timely comment for what we know will be quite a bit of media on that case. The next item is the water horse case. There is a hearing in front of the Court of Appeals on April 7th. Our appellate division in the AG's office will be arguing on behalf of Division of Water Rights and Division of Water Resources. And so that is online. If you're so interested, you can watch. And the last item is the Colorado River Authority has approved several projects for its demand management pilot program. There was a lot of discussion about that during the Water Users Conference this week. One of those projects will require a change of Green River Block contract water rights. So I and Candace are working with the Colorado River Authority to develop a new contract for the water user to cover the O&M fee and the water fee that have to be paid to reclamation for use of that right under the Green River Block contract. And that's my very quick 2-minute discussion.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah before she leaves? Great. Mr. Chair, that's all that we had for you. And I have heard some people say it would be lovely to have a 10-minute break before you.
I think that's just an awesome idea. So let's take a break for 10 minutes and then we'll convene to start our regular board meeting.
Perfect.
Thank you.